Today we're going to talk about the failure to pass a $15 minimum wage, the success of passing the COVID relief package, and Republicans' very, very important priority of Dr. Seuss. I also interview Congressman Ro Khanna about the minimum wage and eliminating the filibuster. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen, and you're listening to No Lie. So we had two major pieces of news this week, one really good and one pretty awful. So we'll start with the bad news and end on a high note. And that is that the $15 minimum wage didn't make it into the final COVID relief package. The Senate parliamentarian had ruled that the minimum wage hike didn't comply with budget reconciliation, which only requires a simple majority to pass. And so instead it would need to pass as a regular bill and need to reach a 60-vote threshold. But the issue is that the parliamentarian's ruling here isn't binding. It is an advisory opinion. And the vice president has the power to overrule her if she wanted to, which has already been done before. It happened in 1975 when then Vice President Nelson Rockefeller ignored the advice of the parliamentarian as Senate debated filibuster rules. It happened in 2013 when the Democrats eliminated the filibuster to approve presidential nominees that were being blocked by Republicans. And it happened in 2017 when Republicans further eroded the filibuster to approve Supreme Court nominees. Parliamentarians have even been outright removed before. In 2001, the Senate was also split 50-50. Republicans were trying to pass what else but tax cuts through Congress using budget reconciliation. The parliamentarian ruled that the bill couldn't be considered using reconciliation, and so what did Republicans do? They replaced him, and they got their tax cut. But that's not what happened here, with the issue being that the White House said almost immediately that they wouldn't try to overrule the parliamentarian. And it felt a lot like they were just rolling over without much of a fight. But in fairness, two things. First, there were a number of Democratic senators who had said outright that they wouldn't vote to overrule the parliamentarian, including Joe Manchin. So without those votes, any effort to circumvent the process was DOA anyway. The other reason is that unemployment benefits expire on March 14th, so this bill needed to be passed before then. So if the $15 minimum wage was going to hold the entire process up and endanger an otherwise absolutely necessary package from passing, then the White House probably made the calculation to move forward without it. Now, that's not to say that failing to pass a minimum wage hike right now wasn't a huge missed opportunity, because it is. It's a missed opportunity both morally and politically. Morally, we're talking about people who, even if they work 40 hours a week, are still living in poverty. No one in the richest country in the world should have to be impoverished working full time. And if a company can't afford to pay the $15, then that's the company's problem, not the workers. Part of running a business is paying the cost of goods, cost of services, whatever it is. You shouldn't be able to underpay human beings just because a few wealthy senators making almost $200,000 a year decided that it wasn't important enough. Even politically, it makes sense. Raising the minimum wage is popular, massively popular. Raising the minimum wage passed with 61% of the vote in Florida. That's 10 points ahead of Trump, who actually won the state, and 13 points ahead of Biden. Like, if you're able to give 27 million workers a raise with the stroke of a pen, if you're able to deliver that kind of a tangible change in someone's life, you do it. And then when it comes time to show up at the polls and you have to choose between the party who spent the last few years whining about stuff like Dr. Seuss and the party that more than doubled the minimum wage, guess which party is coming out on top? So with that said, we should continue to push every Democratic senator to support this minimum wage increase. If not because it's the right thing to do, then at a bare minimum because it's political suicide not to. Like, we don't get to criticize Republicans for passing a $1.5 trillion tax cut if we're not then willing to help regular people. Those are the rules. You can be a moderate Democrat and still acknowledge that a person working full-time and making $15,000 a year is not okay. It's not okay in California, and it's not okay in West Virginia. But aside from the issue of a $15 minimum wage, in better news, after a marathon voting session, Senate Democrats ultimately passed the $1.9 trillion COVID relief package on a strictly party line vote, 50-49. And so now, thanks solely to Democrats, Americans will receive another $1,400 in addition to the $600 already issued. There will be $300 a week in jobless benefits, a child allowance up to $3,600, cutting child poverty in half. There's going to be $350 billion in state and local aid, money for the ACA, for COBRA, vaccine distribution, real, tangible benefits for a country that so desperately needs it after years of Republican incompetence followed by Republican austerity measures. And by the way, while Republicans will offer bad faith arguments like the fact that this bill wasn't bipartisan, the only place it wasn't bipartisan was in Congress. Otherwise, the American people overwhelmingly supported this legislation, and that was a point that Biden was quick to pick up on.
And you know, it may sound strange, but a lot of senators and congressmen I want to thank, but I really want to thank the American people for making all this possible. You say, well, how did they make it possible? Well, quite frankly, without the overwhelming bipartisan support of the American people, this would not have happened. Your elected officials heard you. Overwhelming public support. Every public opinion poll shows overwhelming support for this plan. And for the last weeks, it's shown that. Every public opinion poll shows that people want this. They believe it's needed, and they believe it's urgent.
And the fact that this bill was passed with only Democratic support is only underscored by what Republicans spent their time doing while this relief bill was making its way through Congress. And that is that Republicans have been wailing about Dr. Seuss for the last week. I mean, seriously, I've seen more references to Dr. Seuss in the last 7 days than I did during the entirety of my childhood. Just to quickly sum up the issue at hand here, after reviewing its collection, Dr. Seuss Enterprises decided to stop publishing 6 books because they, quote, portray people in ways that are hurtful and wrong. And that was in reference to depictions of Asian and Black people. That's it. Pretty simple. Some of these books were published in the 1930s, so it shouldn't come as a surprise that not all of them withstood the test of time. But Republicans decided to seize on these Dr. Seuss books like the American flag itself was being outlawed, like the liberals were taking away hot dogs and hamburgers and fireworks. Even though, A, this was a business decision by the publisher after a review that occurred a year ago, and B, who actually cares? Like, we're in the middle of a pandemic and a jobs crisis and an economic recession, and you have a political party that is trying desperately to brand itself the party of working people, and yet when working people need help, their elected officials can't stop fucking talking about Dr. Seuss. Here's Kevin McCarthy, the most powerful Republican in the House, reading Green Eggs and Ham.
Green Eggs and Ham by Dr. Seuss. I am Sam. I am Sam. Sam I am. That's Sam I am, that's Sam I am. I do not like that Sam I am. Do you like green eggs and ham? I do not like them, Sam I am. I do not like green eggs and ham. Would you like them here or there? I would not like them here or there. I would not like them anywhere. I do not like green eggs and ham. I do not like them, Sam I am.
And Green Eggs and Ham wasn't even one of the books that was canceled. Like, if you really want to make a big show of defending these books, show the images of the Asian characters with 2 lines for eyes. Show the Black characters who are shirtless, shoeless, and wearing grass skirts. Defend that. But of course they can't and they won't, and so instead, they'll defend a straw man and do some performance art defending a book that's not even involved in this so-called scandal in any way. And if it's not Dr. Seuss, then it's Mr. Potato Head. Whatever the subject, the fact that Republicans are so hell-bent on trying to train our attention on these bullshit culture war wedge issues is a testament to the fact that they are getting killed on the issues that matter. Like, if all you're doing right now is trying to get people to care about cancel culture, while you have 10 million Americans who've lost their jobs, then that doesn't exactly reflect well on your legislative priorities. But that is how backwards that party is. That instead of helping pass this bill and delivering some relief to people after their own party mangled the response to this virus, they'd rather not only unanimously block it, but then have the audacity to tell you that the issue you should be focusing on is Dr. Seuss. And just one more note on that. You know, while Trump was president, every Democrat voted for the $2 trillion CARES Act, even though doing so helped Trump, because it was more important to help people who needed it than to worry about sticking it to the party in power. And yet now, while Biden's president, 0 Republicans voted for the $1.9 trillion American Relief Plan, because hurting Biden is more important than helping Americans. Time and time again, Republicans have made it clear that their only priority, their only one, is to make Democrats fail, even if doing so means the country will fail. Now, one final thought on this whole $15 minimum wage versus the whole COVID relief package. And that is that while I think the $15 minimum wage is a huge missed opportunity and deserves criticism, I think it's just as important to make sure we acknowledge and celebrate our successes. And passing this $1.9 trillion relief package is a huge success. And no, it's not perfect, but it will have very, very real impacts for hundreds of millions of Americans. So we can strive to be better and more progressive. That is our job on the left. But we have to be careful not to fall into the trap of letting the disappointments overshadow the accomplishments. Because remember, Obama passed the Recovery Act and then the ACA with relatively little fanfare. And it opened up a huge vacuum that Republicans filled with bad faith attacks, even though the Relief Act saved the auto industry and our economy, and the ACA was the most important piece of legislation for healthcare in modern American history. Meanwhile, like, Trump could wipe his ass on his own, and he'd call for a military parade, and Maria Bartiromo would host a 6-hour special about it on Fox News. So I get that not everyone is 100% satisfied with this package, but I have zero intention of letting the right dictate the terms of the conversation here or spinning this to their benefit. Because while this bill might not be perfect, it is a hell of a lot better than what we'd have if Republicans were in office, so let's not forget that. To listen to my interview with Congressman Ro Khanna about the likelihood of a $15 minimum wage passing and his thoughts on eliminating the filibuster, check out the interviews playlist on my YouTube channel.